Welcome to Health Hour, a session for you by Black doctors, hosted by the Caribbean and African Health Network. Ever sat in a doctor's office thinking, they just don't get it? Or search for health advice online, but you can't understand it? Felt unheard? You're not alone, and you found your solution with Health Hour. Every Saturday at 11 a.m., this is your space where Caribbean and African healthcare professionals speak about health with a focus on Black people. We tackle the topics that keep you up at night: mental health, chronic conditions, preventive care, sexual health, men's health, women's health, heart disease, and much more. All with the cultural context that matters, because our Black doctors understand the unique challenges we face. Here is what you can expect: real talk from doctors who look like you and get it, lived experience testimonies, practical advice, illness prevention and management tips, and a space of understanding without judgment. You also get to ask questions. Your questions drive the conversation. Health Hour, where community meets Black health expertise.
Good morning, everybody on all platforms, and welcome to Health Hour today, run by Khan. Just want to welcome everybody on Zoom, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. My name's Dr. Sarah Adewumi, and I'm going to be the host this morning. Today, we've got an amazing talk on menopause and mental health, which I'm sure many of you are excited to hear about. We've got one of our amazing consultants, Adult Psychiatrist, Dr. Catherine Muyeba, who has over 25 years of experience, specializing in mental health, addiction, adult ADHD, and she's also a lifestyle physician. So this is going to be so insightful. We're going to get insight from the medical side, the mental health side, and also the lifestyle side. I want to just encourage everybody on all platforms to ask questions. It's going to be monitored. So at the end, we've got a question and answer session where we'll read out the questions and Dr. Muyeba will give us great answers. I'm really excited for this, and I'm sure everybody in the chat is too. I'm just going to hand over to Dr. Catherine Muyeba and we're going to be exploring mental health and menopause. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Can you see me? Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's super exciting to have so many people join us and learn together. And I've been following Khan's Health Hour recording sessions on YouTube. So if you haven't seen them, make an effort to go and check them all out. So we'll be talking about menopause. So it's from the mental health side of things, and I will be sharing the slides in a minute before we start. Just give me a few minutes, few seconds. It worked before, so it should work. Can people see that yet? No, present. So can everyone see the slides?
Yeah.
So I can't see anybody, so just let me know as we go. So I'm Catherine Muyeba. As you heard, I'm an addiction psychiatrist, but also do ADHD because of the link between the two, very close link, but also general mental health. So not everyone who I see has addiction problems, or they may have addiction without mental health problems, and that's fine. And then alongside that, and I think it was more of a sort of a delusional belief that most people were not having their lives cut short, especially in addiction, because of drugs or alcohol, but the lifestyle factors as well. So that's how I stumbled across lifestyle medicine, got certified in that, and help people more broadly. And not just helping people who have alcohol and drug problems or mental health problems, but the general population. We all need to understand how lifestyle medicine works, just so that we can lead those vibrant and fruitful lives and avoid ending up in my addictions clinic, so to speak. But if you need to, by all means, you need to be there. Okay, so It's really funny how, during the time we're growing up, especially women who are here, you probably remember those health classes and books, awkward conversations when we were attaining puberty or when we we're about to attain puberty. But then with menopause, there was just silence, silence. Nobody sort of told us, well, at least at the time, but now the conversations are happening more and more. But that silence, no framework, no grace, just get on with it. And I don't even know how our mothers really coped. At least now we have some information. And both of them, when you really look at it, are like hormonal earthquakes. And one was given more time and knowledge, but the other not less so, and especially around the cultural side of things. So if we think about as the starting point, and then let's move on to the next. And what's actually happening is not just the small issue that's happening in the brains, it's a proper rewiring. All sorts of things are going on in the brain, major biological, neurological, and societal change that's going on. So never think it's just a small plan line issue that we can deal with it quickly. It's a major thing that's going on. And the more we understand that, especially the men in the house, the more we understand that, the better it is to see what we can do about it, and so on. So in terms of the struggles that women face, the transition, the change, many of the times it gets us off guard. It's more than just hot flashes that are going on. It's more than just, the lived experiences that people talk about, the kind of problems that we face. And then also it's that sense of loss, when you're getting to that stage in your life, you're losing your ability to have future children. Just a time of the life where all sorts of things are going on. It's more than just a transition, and it totally gets us off guard. And before we go to the science bit, I want us to just think about the hormonal side of things. And I won't go into a lot of detail about the hormonal health, because there's a wonderful presentation on YouTube and I think it was about 3 months ago by Dr. Inutu, where she talked about women's hormonal health. So if you haven't watched it, you should go and watch it. You find it really insightful and helpful, not just talking about menopause, but also, from puberty all the way to premenstrual tension and so on. So just how the hormones play and the impact that it has, especially menopause and physical health and psychological health. There was a really good Q&A there. So I would encourage you to watch it to get a better understanding. So this slide is probably one of the busiest and also the only one which will have too many science things. But I just thought to help us understand what actually is happening in the brain and impact it's having on our mental health. If you think the two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen helps with neural plasticity. It's a buzzword you hear a lot now being talked about. But in a nutshell, it's just basically neuroplasticity, about our ability for the brain to adapt, to rewire, to change. And it's very much based on our experiences, very much on the things that we focus on in terms of thinking. But estrogen helps us with that. So if we going through some challenges, estrogen helps us adapt. And then also boosts serotonin and the dopamine, the kind of the feel-good hormones, the hormones that help us feel better in our mood and encourage us to have motivation. Progesterone, on the other hand, works on those kind of receptors that bring about a calming influence on us. There are certain medications that work on those receptors and help relax us, but that's a natural relaxant, so to speak. But when perimenopause sets in, both just swing wildly all over the place. And the best way to describe that is that seesaw that's going on. So 1 minute you feel you can't adapt to anything. Next minute you feel your mood is really down, can't do anything, feel depressed, feeling anxious. Next minute the things that you would normally just get up and do, really struggling with motivation. That meeting deadlines have become such a chore. It's much more harder and so on. And then that also affects that natural calming thing, feeling tense, feeling anxious, and for no reason. Sometimes women just, burst out crying or feel panicky. for no apparent reason, but it's because of the brain and what's going on with the effects, the impact of the up and down hormones in all sorts of places. So I just thought to set that off to help us understand what's actually happening in the brain, and recognizing that this is a brain issue. It's not that because we're becoming daft or becoming, like you're no longer who you are. That's what it feels like. That's the reality. But it's because all that is happening in the brain. So on this slide, I just wanted to talk about the biopsychosocial situation as well. The tipping point where these three aspects of our lives sort of collide, so to speak. So the biological side of things, as the hormones drop, it will affect the way we sleep. It will affect, our heart health. Again, Dr. Inoto talked a lot about the increase in cortisol, the increase in heart disease, the increase in, the effect of insulin on our bodies. The effect on our bodies. So these changes in hormones are not just affecting, the periods and stopping the periods and so on, but it's affecting the overall body, and the impact can be felt. And yes, lots of fast put on a lot of weight, which is much harder to lose. Whereas when we're younger, it was easy to just go to Weight Watchers, and within 3 months, you're back to your goal weight. But over this period, it's become so much harder. Then the next bit is the psychology. And this is where, the shifting in the identity, sometimes some people are afraid of aging. So it just demonstrates the reality of what's happening. And where you feel like, oh no, I'm still 21 or I'm still 30, the hormones are demonstrating the reality of what's actually happening. But again, grace and wisdom, we're becoming wiser. So sometimes that also plays on our minds. And then next is the social side of things. And this is where perhaps our career is peaking. You're going for those top jobs, or you're progressing in your career because you're becoming experienced. And then the impact of the, decline in the hormones, you can't meet the demands anymore. You're lacking that social structure as well. And sometimes it's also the time maybe you're taking on other roles in your life. Perhaps, like moving on to the next slide, you're taking on, the real life pressures that are happening. You're caring perhaps for aging parents, maybe children living home, going to university, going to set up their own homes. The career and identity pressures as well. Maybe you don't respond as fast, and new younger generation is coming on, and sometimes it can feel like we are being sort of excluded. We're not who we used to be, and can have an impact on the career pressures. And then everyone's talking about the different generations that are coming up, the culture, very different perhaps from the way that we are or the way that we were raised. And sometimes it can be really difficult to integrate, and make it difficult because all the other things that are going on as regards our biology. And in some situations, because of the impact, it has an impact on our resilience. It's much harder to bounce back when we are faced with when life happens. It's much harder to bounce back because of the biology that's happening in our brains. So what about the economic cost? So the document that we were looking at, and we agreed with Professor Fay about to look at the document published by the Royal College of Psychiatrists, a position statement about menopause, that, we have been too quiet on that. What is the evidence of what's actually going on, and what are the consequences if we don't do anything about it? And some of that data, which was published in there, was quite starking. 900,000 women have left work because of menopause symptoms, because it's just become too difficult to manage the motivation, the depression, the inconsistent, you don't know how you turn up that day. You don't know how you wake up that day. So all that reality forcing women to walk out of jobs where perhaps they were ready to be promoted to, they were ready to take on new organizations, because of the unmanaged, and I'll have to say this again, unmanaged menopausal symptoms, because later we'll talk about some light at the end of the tunnel. And then 30,000 pounds cost per departure. So when an employee leaves, the employers average costs is about 30,000 to replace them. I can speak from sort of working in health. When somebody leaves, we don't just wait until we employ. We have to find a replacement, maybe a locum doctor, a locum nurse, or somebody else to fill that void. And they are usually more expensive. So it's costing the employer whenever we don't manage the perimenopause, menopause side of things, so that people are walking out of work, or even just the lost days in sickness. 14 million lost days every year on the UK's economy. And yes, a lot of times we work for organizations, we work for the NHS, but some of these are your own businesses. You're having to think about the people that you employ having to be taking time off because of unmanaged menopausal symptoms. And the data showed that the NHS is the highest hit because a lot of women over 50 work in the health sector. And just looking at that window of vulnerability, looking at the biological data behind the change, this is where now we look into the mental health side of things. The biological data shows that 112% increase in the risk of developing bipolar disorder, or it being difficult to manage because over the perimenopausal menopausal period. And also a 30% increase in the incidence of depression, major depression. So perhaps maybe somebody's never suffered with depression, but during that period, because of the vulnerability, that window of vulnerability, they develop a major depressive illness. And then we have seen data again that the antidepressants are prescribed the most between 50 to 59 years old in women. So that's a significant demographic factor. This is again the time, where people are undergoing menopause or going through menopause. And then just again worth mentioning as well, obviously the suicide risk with all the hormonal imbalance, the depression, the bipolar risk, and the circumstances that affect the menopause and the hormone imbalance. The suicide risk in England and Wales peaks. When you look at the data around suicide, it peaks between 45 and 54, which again corresponds to that period of their lives. So what else then contributes to the issue being unmanaged? They came up with a term like about diagnostic overshadowing. And this is when the hormonal shifts are mistaken for a standalone mental illness. Say, for instance, somebody has an intense anxiety, sudden intense anxiety episode because of the hormones, and a diagnosis or a misdiagnosis of generalized anxiety is made. When it's misdiagnosed, the treatment is different. The treatment is definitely different. And then when they have a lot of high energy and risky behavior, they can make a standalone bipolar mania diagnosis, which perhaps is not right if we haven't looked at all the other factors. And then when somebody withdraws because of their identity and stuff like that, they may look at it as just behavioral problems rather than actually looking what is the hidden cause, what is the hidden root cause. Could it be the hormones? Has anyone asked about it? Has anyone tested? So it's important to just be aware that diagnostic overshadowing often happens, and people, as clinicians, who attribute the symptoms to some other pre-existing condition or something else happening in their life. But when we ask all those questions, that's not to say that somebody doesn't have an underlying depressive illness or a bipolar disorder. But when we ask the right questions, we can treat both simultaneously with better outcomes for individuals. Okay. Sorry about this. So the other problem that we see, I don't know, I think something has happened to my slides, I'm sorry. The other problem that we see is that medicine is in silos. When we look at psychiatry and we look at gynecology, the two services are not talking. So the plan is there's no connection between integrated the endocrine system, the neuroendocrine system, where we can look at what's happening in the woman's brain, and also the cross-specialty communication that is lacking. What the Royal College is advocating for whole person pathways. If I'm experiencing menopausal symptoms, and also experiencing anxiety symptoms, the two specialties should be able to communicate and understand what's happening. And then we have the system again, where the system fails marginalized people. For example, the neurodivergent women, particularly with ADHD or autism, they normally suffer more symptoms because they no longer can mask their ADHD or autism symptoms because of the hormones, going down, the impact on motivation, impact on dopamine, and it has a significant impact on them. So they often don't, if they're undiagnosed or even diagnosed, they don't often get the service that they need when that scaffolding that's held them up all these years falls off. Equally with people with learning disability, intellectual disabilities, when they reach that level of menopause, it can be expressed through different ways. Perhaps maybe they get more anxious, or maybe behavioral symptoms are worse off, and often they'll be treated with things like antipsychotic medication, which is not often the right thing and possibly not always considered for HRT. And then you've got the trans men. So these are people who were born male and then transitioned to female. So they are missed out in those conversations about menopause because outwardly they now look like men. And when they are presenting with these symptoms, because they still have the internal organs which are affected by estrogen and progesterone. The same thing with the non-binary who have made a decision not to choose their gender in the male-female characteristics. So the other thing that's missing, especially in sort of a marginalized community like ourselves, is that relational safety. And what does it mean? When we cannot build trust in the care system, that perhaps we would not be listened to as deeply as we would want, and the services probably don't adapt to our own lived reality. So without that, we find that a lot of times people disengage. They disengage from services where they perceive that they are not understood. And I see this as well in the addiction services. It's underrepresented, for the marginalized communities, the certain ethnic minority groups. There is underrepresentation in there. That's not to say that people are not using substances. That's not to say that people are not undergoing menopause or perimenopause, but they then disengage, they stop seeking help, and they suffer alone in silence and completely leave the whole system. And then the consequences that we've looked at, the impact on employment, impact on their mental health, impact on just everything in general. And they are, the marginalized community are vulnerable to this kind of failure because the relational safety net, that's the missing foundation in their situation. The other thing to consider, yes, sometimes maybe people have had antidepressants before and have been stable, and then around the menopause time, things get worse, but the antidepressant doesn't work the way that it used to before. And more studies are being done because before, most of the studies were done perhaps with more males. So when it was said antidepressants work for depression, not sufficient studies have been done with women, and how do the response to medication change over time. So it's not fully understood how menopause alters, the effectiveness of antidepressant medication. So when the estrogen declines, these drugs may entirely change. They may entirely change their impact on the brain. So maybe not responding the way that they used to. And then sometimes maybe people would be prescribed more, a higher and higher dose, or they may be prescribed multiple antidepressants to make things work. So it needs to be calibrated, for younger women and men, but also for women who are getting into menopause when those medications stop working. So more research is required to make sure that this happens. So we're looking for those breakthroughs. And I know we're getting there bit by bit, but we need to continue talking about it. And what does a new standard of care look like? And this is what the Royal College is pushing about the integrated care. Really important that we coordinate what's happening in primary care with the GPs, what's happening with the gynecologists, what's happening with the psychiatrists. And when we are all talking from the same hymn sheet, so to speak, the community gets the best care. And it's everyone's business, because I may go to the eye specialist and maybe complain about certain symptoms. The eye doctor should be able to recognize something and then maybe ask those curious questions, or equally put a note to the GP that they suspect that you may be going through this. And the same thing if the GP sees me, or the eye doctor or the cardiologist sees me and notice that maybe my mood is lower than normal. They've been managing my hypertension for many years and it's just going up and up unexplained. What else could be happening? Again, asking those curious questions and jotting a line for the GP to have a look. So NICE makes it very clear. The guidance is clear. They recommend cognitive behavioral therapy to help manage the symptoms of depression and anxiety and perimenopausal mental health related problems, but also they recommend HRT. So combining the HRT, sorry, I said I wasn't going to use jargon. So the hormone replacement treatment. So we talked about the estrogen and progesterone. There are different formulations which are now available. Speak to your GP about it, which replace the estrogen and the progesterone in measures based on your own circumstances. So the best thing is when you feel that you may be going through the change, asking the GP. They have various tests that they can do, but equally, if necessary, you may be referred to a specialist. But what is recommended as treatment is a combination of the hormone replacement therapy and the talking therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I know that sometimes, especially like in our communities, we're not very happy about taking tablets, and I totally understand that. But sometimes having a conversation, a real honest conversation, what's the worst thing that medication can do if that is what is recommended? So some of the times, perhaps maybe the clinicians may not be, I don't use the word pushing, but may not be advocating that you consider this, because usually the answer is just no, we don't take tablets, we don't do this. But I think it's worth giving it a go. And I can talk about a lot of conditions that I have treated, or seen people, like if people don't want to consider medication, have a time when you say, by this time, if things don't get better, then I'll consider that. I think there's not much lost by trying. And if you do get side effects, by all means, stop or look at plan B of the options which are available. But equally, just be open and yes, consider medication. It is recommended for a reason. They do a lot of studies before they decide what is first-line treatment or what is recommended as treatment for various conditions. And then the other thing with the new standard, working towards that trauma-informed care, recognizes that these symptoms are intertwined in life history, the social context. There are multiple factors. So it's not just, oh, the hormones have stopped now, or your blood pressure is unmanageable now, or your bipolar is unmanageable now. But look at the whole system, look at the whole individual as a whole. That's really, really important. That's what happens. And the next thing which I wanted to talk about is let's advocate for ourselves. When you're going to that GP appointment or the specialist appointment, take the patterns. What patterns have you noticed? Have you been tracking your mood, tracking your physical symptoms, so that you can show the evidence? Because I know we only get about 10 minutes with the GPs, don't we? So if you've been tracking, you've got information there to hand, it would be the best use of your 10 minutes. And equally, there's an app that Dr. Louise, who's the menopause specialist, she has an app called Balance. So there's a free version of that. If you download the app, you can record your tracking in there, and then you can sort of do some like simple reports, which you can then show to your GP. I know there's a section which is paid, but the section which is free is equally valuable. So when you download the app and then check and track, then that way when you go to the GP, you've got some information to start off from to take you to the next level, maybe doing the blood test or refer to the specialist. And then ask questions.
Sorry, Dr. Catherine.
Sorry.
Could you please reshare your slides? It seems to have been frozen. So we just want to make sure that we're keeping up with what you are saying. I'm just going to stop sharing for you, and then you can just reshare again so it reactivates.
Right.
Thanks.
So has it been frozen the whole time?
No, I don't think it's been paused the whole time. I think the last screen we saw was a lady smiling. Suffering is not destiny.
Yeah,
So apologies. I assumed you were just talking based on her smiling, but yeah, if you could just
right.
please reshare, it should be fine.
Okay, let me share again.
Thank you.
I do apologize.
No, it's fine. You're doing great. We have lots of questions in the chat, so you're gonna definitely have a lot of questions to answer, and
Yeah,
the people in the chat are definitely enjoying the session.
right. Okay, let me see. Okay, so this was going to be my next slide anyway, but let me just finish saying what I was saying before about, discuss the medication with the doctor and be firm. Being firm and being rude are different, and also being firm and being loud are different. I think we will always be lots of time be perceived as loud or strong or whatever the case might be, but be firm in getting to the next stage, and definitely. But having the evidence with you, you've been tracking, you've written it down, and you go with the evidence, you've tracked your patterns, you asking those questions. Could this be connected with perimenopause? Could this be connected to the changes in my hormones? It's fine to ask those questions. And yes, sometimes it's like maybe brushed off, no, this, and the symptoms are dismissed. Refusal doesn't mean that that's it. You can go back, and ask again. Just on the slides, I think this is where probably it was frozen, that suffering is not destiny. When we go through the perimenopause, yes, it's challenging, but if we're not getting help, that can be classed as neglect, neglect. We need to fix the system and restore the power within us to be able to challenge the system and then ensure that we're stable. But just on this, yes, I've talked about lifestyle medicine based on the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. Those 6 pillars, when we implement them, do significantly help in terms of managing the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. And I know that Dr. Inotu talked a lot about that when she was talking about, making sure you're making healthy connections, making sure you're reducing the harms, like the harms to do with too much alcohol or substances, sometimes even too much coffee, keeping an eye on those substances, and equally habits. There's the TikTok scrolling, watching movie after video after video. Those kind of things can have an impact on our levels of dopamine in the brain. So breaking those unhelpful habits helps a lot. Exercise as well, within what you can do. The recommendation is 150 exercise minutes a week, and of moderate exercise, and for the high intensity, 75 minutes a week. Just develop a routine, going for a walk, getting off a bus earlier, parking your car some distance away from the shop when you're shopping. Just little different things which can become part of who you are, what you do daily. And then eating nutritiously. There's food for the brain, whole meal foods, avoiding too many, the foods that release oxygen really fast, some white rice, focus on the whole meal foods, the pulses, things that nourish the brain and increases the protein that is then produced in the brain to help with the menopausal symptoms. Getting that rest, the sleep, we really, really need our sleep. So focusing on getting good quality sleep, and then managing stress, finding ways to find time to manage any stress levels, because we all become stressed one way or the other. But how do we manage those levels of stress? And I'll share my social platforms where I talk about something that you can do every day. So on Monday is Meetup Monday. Find people that you can meet up, whether by phone or have a cup of coffee with them, but connect with somebody. On Tuesday is the Transformation Tuesday. And that's where you're looking, what unhelpful habits can I change? Whether it's maybe cutting that extra cup of coffee, or that sort of thing. Any transformation that you can put every Tuesday, do something, and these things stack up. On Wednesday, we call it Wellbeing Wednesday, a nice meal, nice, delicious, wholesome meal. Thursday, we're looking at Thriving. That's when you make sure you put in maybe go beyond the daily walk, maybe do an extra Zumba class on YouTube or whatever the case might be. Friday is for full rest Friday. Make sure you really catch up on rest, catch up on that sleep. And Saturday is the stress-free Saturday. Find ways to just chill, whether it's on your own or with others. Go for a longer walk, get a massage, just mindfulness practices, anything that can help sort of calibrate and regulate your nervous system. All those kind of things, when they stack up and done on a regular basis, it does help in terms of managing the perimenopause or menopause symptoms. So this will be the last slide. We talked about time to shine, and in the document that was published by the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and by the way, it's readily available, anyone can go and read it. They had some beautiful lived experience women who were giving really wonderful quotes. I particularly was drawn to Wendy, and she's the one who was talking about, with help, support, and guidance, there is no need to struggle in silence at all. It can also be a time to shine. Find time. This is an undeniable biological problem, and it disrupts our mental health. And even the most resilient does struggle during this time. But it's never a permanent decline. It does get better, and with the right support, going to talk to the doctor, being firm, asking those questions, doing your part by tracking and taking the evidence. Even in the workplace, asking for flexibility, reasonable adjustments. And yes, we are all a team here. Personal advocacy helps a lot in those networks. The fog does lift. The fog does lift. It's a transition, yes, but it's also, we're growing up, we're becoming wiser. We also know our boundaries, whether it's at work or home, anywhere. We can maintain those healthy boundaries to make sure that we're putting in that self-care, and then we are growing together. So it is also a time to shine. Thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Dr. Muyeba, for that talk. It was definitely great to see you empowering people, and the different methods that you've given us to take control of our own health and menopause symptoms, perimenopausal symptoms is great. We do have lots of questions in the chat, and you've got lots of love hearts and claps all around. So thank you so much. I'll go on to the questions that we've got in the chat at the moment. So our first question here, got loads of rounds of applause for you, Dr. Muyeba. Oh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What proportion of people experience those symptoms? I think this isn't related to menopausal symptoms in general.
Yeah. The literature and documented in that article, 80% of women who experience them, and it can range from a few years for the lucky ones, but can go on for 10 years. So we're in this for the long haul. So the best thing, when they start, have a plan. For you who haven't started yet, it is coming. So be prepared. And for those who are going through it, you don't have to suffer in silence. There is help available, and speak to your doctor.
I love that. Don't need to suffer in silence. I love that. We've got a question from someone who's listening from Wolverhampton. How do you know if you have the balance right between estrogen and progesterone intake, as well as with all the changes happening? How do you know how you should feel, and what happens if the balance isn't right?
Yeah. So is that when you're starting to develop perimenopause? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what they're alluding
to.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to know in terms of the balance would be through the blood test, which the GP would do. When you start having symptoms, go to that balance app and start tracking and see a pattern. So some people, maybe the period will stop, but for others, it can be on and off for a number of years. Some people, it doesn't even stop. But when you start noticing some change, because we know our bodies so well, don't we? So when you start noticing some change, the best way to know in terms of diagnosis is through some blood tests. But the GP will ask you the questions, and they'll know, some pointers, then decide. Sometimes the GPs are not always convinced that it's time yet. Otherwise, they'll just be doing people's blood tests every month, you know. So you have symptoms, gather that evidence. That app, the Balance app, is helpful. Then see the GP. The GP will guide you whether to do the blood test at that point or not. When they start treatment, obviously it's the monitoring issue. So they will keep checking, and the specialist will tell you about that.
Okay, brilliant. And I know you mentioned that app. I think we did have a question about what the app was called, and I think you just told us.
It's called Balance.
Balance, brilliant. So you mentioned that app is called Balance, so that answers one of our questions in the chat. We've got a question that says, I am in surgical menopause as of 8 weeks ago. High anxiety at night. GP says no need for progesterone. They got testosterone privately and they're on estradiol from their GP. They've been offered antidepressants, but they're not depressed. Can one have progesterone prescribed to help?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I'm not a specialist in prescribing hormones for people, but I am aware of what's happening, what the guidance shows. When surgical menopause happens, obviously it's like instant, isn't it? Whereas for when it's happening perimenopause, that's happening gradually. But when the ovaries are removed and there's almost instant loss of that, that's sometimes people describe it as even more tragic. And it should form part of the plan about what's going to happen to manage that. So if there's a problem, you're still having anxiety and so on, go back to the GP, and if necessary, be referred to the specialist to go and look at the hormonal health side of things. Yeah.
Time to seek some advice from the GP.
And like I was saying before, sorry, Sarah, like I was saying before about integrating psychiatry and gynecology and GPs, because sometimes things can happen where somebody has had that surgical induced menopause, and maybe the psychiatrist doesn't know or doesn't link it, and they're like, oh no, we can't do anything else, and be discharged. So that increases the risk for people. So that communication, whenever we see somebody, we need to know what else is happening. Not everyone is able to sort of tell you, but at least if you communicate with the GP, you'll be able to understand and look at the whole case, because it can be tragic. If somebody has had history of depression or bipolar, they have the surgical menopause, that's the time they need everyone supporting them.
Yeah, it could be a bigger picture, looking at the whole picture. Brilliant.
Definitely.
Someone's mentioned that one of the main things that they're dealing with is a loss of balance, and they're wondering if anyone else deals with this and if there's some way that they can handle this.
Yeah, I think, again, I'll be referring you a lot to the GP. There's different things that can cause loss of balance, rather than just say it's the perimenopause. There are multiple symptoms that people experience, and the best way, go and see the GP, look at the different symptoms, and rule out other things which could, you know, there's so many things that can affect balance from the brain. So it might be better to speak to your GP and, again, track those symptoms and see how they all relate, and speak to the GP.
Yeah, we've got another ad for the Balance app. So
I'm not getting paid.
Yeah. So there seems to be so many companies that are offering products that they claim are solutions to menopause and provide relief. Could the doctor comment on this, please? And they've said that this is a really interesting session as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Yes, I'll comment on that. There's things which, like, non-licensed medication, which is out there, supplements. A lot of people sort of self-medicating or going to different practitioners who are doing all sorts of things. Some of them, there is some evidence in it, but others not so. So people just trial and error. Again, speak to your GP about them. And there are lots of practices which have come up as menopause clinics. Most of them are run by GPs, but also by other professionals. You could speak to them about them, but those will probably be private. So check and always check, whatever you're taking, and look at what other constituents are in that supplement, just so that it doesn't interact with other things which are going on. What are the side effects, and are they also from a legitimate source?
Brilliant. Our next question that we've got here is, what if you can't take HRT? Are there natural remedies or techniques we can try to manage symptoms?
Mm-hmm. So I've talked about the lifestyle medicine side of things. And like I said, I see people with ADHD, not everyone wants to go on medication, but when they implement the lifestyle factors, the changes, they see a significant change for them. Not everyone is suitable for HRT. And when you see the GP or the specialist and they explain that you're not suitable for HRT, or you discuss with them that you want to try something which is not HRT, then they can give you some guidance around what else you could try. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. I think we've got a question about that healthy weekly calendar that you spoke about. Do you have any pictures or anything, or any links that you could share with us to see
Yes.
that?
I think like if you search for my name, I wish I could do it from here, but like if you search for my name, and it will be either on Instagram or on TikTok, there'll be they're called the Cheers Lifestyle Tracker. So Meetup Monday, I did video series for a whole month, so they're all there. I think I'll post them again so that they can come up, people can see. So there's a video for Mondays, videos for Tuesday, videos for Wednesdays, videos for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah.
Brilliant. And is your Instagram handle just your name, or is there
Somebody
anything
has
else?
just put it in on.
Someone's put it in. Brilliant.
Yeah. And the idea is to make it easier to remember. On Mondays, I make an effort to meet up. I mean, if you meet up on Tuesday, that's fine. But the idea is to do something every day. And the framework, the tracker just helps, so then you can tick a box that you've done it.
Yeah.
And you do it on your own, or you do it with others. You know, that's the idea, to get everyone getting vibrant and healthy together. Do it with your children, do it with your colleagues. Sometimes I'll take some colleagues, we go for the walk at lunchtime while having a walking meeting, you know, that sort of thing. So there are different things that you can do, just making sure that you're doing something, because every little helps. And those habits stack up. When you do it for a month, you'll just naturally be walking effortlessly, because you know how it makes you feel. It makes you feel so much better.
Well, thank you for that. Our next question says, any suggestions on how to improve sleep without medication? They've tried all usual sleep hygiene methods, and the lack of sleep has a huge impact on their symptoms.
Definitely. The lack of sleep, I can't, we don't have time to talk about sleep, but the evidence is so strong about what happens when we don't get sufficient sleep. And 7 to 9 hours a night, it just repairs your brain. Your brain is, you know, being cleaned, and so that by the next morning you're bright, alert, and happier. And when we're not sleeping, the impact it has on that word cortisol is huge. So multiple repercussions on what can happen. So how do we manage sleep without, and I don't know what sleep hygiene that you've tried, but that's what I would recommend. You know, dark room, cool, go to bed earlier, maybe screens off, put the screens out of the room. I think that's the best, because if you can't sleep, you just go for your phone, and then it makes things worse. Coffee, maybe just go off coffee altogether. And sometimes it could be that your mood is affected. There's something that you are worried about. Just take time to really reflect and pause and think, what's going on in my life? How am I? How am I doing in my spiritual walk, in my physical health, in my social circumstances, in my relational health? How am I doing financially? Because there could be points that you can find which maybe perhaps things are not helping. And then that way we're getting to the root cause and identifying anything that can be impacting your sleep. And then from there, problem solve as required. Then other things that can help in terms alongside the sleep hygiene, people find white noise helpful. If I'm not sleeping for whatever reason, I just play sound of rain. And it doesn't take long before I fall asleep and don't wake up until the morning. It doesn't work for everyone. And when you go to YouTube and just look rain sound, there are millions and millions of views, because there's lots of people who are sleeping on those sounds every day. Somebody put in the chat about the Calm app, you know, just to calm down. There are some, you know, some meditations that you can do as well. There are some sounds, you know, sometimes there are people talking, reading scripture in a way that's sort of soothing voice, and it helps calm people down. So I don't know what you have tried, but there's lots of different things that people have tried without need for medication. But if you're not sleeping days and days on end, again, coming back to the medication side of things, talk to your GP. It might be a short-term medication can help reset the situation and then get back to a normal sleep cycle.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. We've got a question that says, what age can one start premenopausal symptoms?
Yeah. Again, it varies. Some people start that quite early, really, really early. And I think Dr. Inato touched on that. There are some who haven't started in their 50s, but some people can start. Maybe the youngest I've heard, obviously, the symptoms initially will be dismissed because you haven't got to that bracket. So by the time it's confirmed, I think the GP might not be jumping to the idea of checking your blood straight away. You may have to go private if you're starting early. But I've heard of somebody in their 30s or early 30s that's happened. Obviously, there's a surgical one that can happen, but then could it be non-surgical, but something is happening to your hormones?
So as young as in the 30s. What about those who have isolated themselves due to anxiety? How can they get help?
Yeah, I think social isolation is one thing, isn't it? And that's why on the lifestyle medicine 6 pillars, one of them is about connection, because there's evidence that when we connect in a healthy way, it impacts our well-being significantly. There's been some studies which have been done in Harvard about a group of students who connected for years and years, and they found, as they did the research and following them up after years, that the thing that was impacting their well-being and longevity was the connection. It had the best links for good health and happiness than money or jobs or grandchildren or whatever the case might be. So it's really, really important to connect. But how can we deal with that? I know that sometimes people can be isolated and they're on their own, but oftentimes they might be a family member. So let's look out for each other. How is Jane doing? How's Kasha doing? Look out for each other. And yes, it's really difficult for them to access help. Advocates make a huge difference. And sometimes people don't want to seek help, and we have to be gentle with them and the hand holding, go with them, talk and help them take that move. At the minute as well, there's lots of online resources. If they don't want to see anyone yet, they can go online and get some of the support, at least start the support there, and then move to something where they can see their GP or specialist as required. But I think when people are isolating, it's our responsibility as well to look out for them, because I will probably be their best advocate and help them that way. Importance of connecting and attending these sessions, because you learn one thing or two and be able to connect with somebody.
The importance of our community. So we've got a question saying, as a Black woman who's holding work, family, community, and constant pressure, how do I cope with perimenopause on days when the mood swings, exhaustion, and brain fog collide with everything I'm responsible for, and I still have to show up as if nothing is happening?
Yeah, that's a challenge, and that's some of the things I talk about as well on my YouTube channel. Being that strong one, being the one that anyone can call upon, anyone that does the tasks, because we get things done. Being the dependable one. But even the dependable one, even though we are looking like we're holding everything together on the outside, we are struggling inside. And I think the starting point would be to be honest about that to ourselves. I can't overemphasize the importance of self-care. Take a break. Have a Kit Kat and take a break. If on that day things just not moving, maybe it's because your body is telling you that you need to rest. And I give you permission, rest. Have cycles where you can rest every single day, find time to be able to rest. And I talked about reflecting before, look inward. How am I doing? How am I doing really? Is it Meetup Monday? Who do you need to call? Who do you need to go for a walk with? It's amazing what happens or what can come out when you go walking with somebody. Things that you have put it internalized can come out, because then you are talking to them, there's a sounding board. Just make time to relax. And even if it's 10 minutes of pausing, it can make such a difference compared with no pause and just keep going and going and going. And I know we carry a reputation of being the strong ones, but equally, let's be aware of that and look internally. How can I know what's going on so that I can do something about it? How can I have a trusted friend or mentor or coach or whatever who I can share this with, so that I'm not the only one internalizing this? And yes, people will, not persuade you, but they'll spur you on to getting that rest. If you need to be away from the children, I offer free babysitting services. Just so you can rest. Yeah, but it's important, make time to rest and, postpone certain things. It's okay to postpone tasks that are on your to-do calendar. And when you're feeling that to-do calendar on Sundays, make sure that you've scheduled rest as well, because it just doesn't happen.
Wow, I love that. It's a schedule rest. That's something that many of us probably don't do, but I love that. It's a gem that I'm taking with me. We've got one more question that says, painful legs and cramps, are they the signs of perimenopause, or could they?
They can be, but like I said, with the balance, check, is there anything else? There are certain chemical imbalances. If maybe your calcium is not right, magnesium is not right, or whatever, those are not the things that you should be looking for. But sometimes it's also just tracking, my food, my fitness pal, track your food for a week and see how you're doing with your nutrients. I remember this was my husband. He was feeling sort of off himself, and even when he goes to his usual jog and run, he was feeling tired. Well, let's track my fitness pal, and just for a week. And we found that he wasn't eating enough foods in terms of the calcium, magnesium, even things like sodium, and just change the diet. He was busy, and we do get busy. We forget to eat, or we end up eating things which are quick but not nourishing us. So the cramps, the imbalance, it could be anything. And if it persists, yes, see your GP, because again, cramps could be because of other things. But just take care in terms of what we're putting in our mouths, what we are drinking, and also the activity. Keep moving, keep eating healthy, and track. So we're tracking the balance, our symptoms, but also track the food, because it does give the nutritional information, even if it's just for a week, and see what it's like. Then that way, when we track, we can change something. We can be intentional.
Thank you. Another question's come through. Do men experience menopause?
I think there's some phenomenon about what men go through, and certainly not the topic for today, but there's some phenomenon in terms of changes of their hormones as well. We don't call it menopause. We'll stick menopause to women.
And we've got we've got one more question.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, is menopause final for getting pregnant? Because some women are nearly 60. Some women who are nearly 60 have gotten pregnant.
Yeah. So it's something which happens over time. The hormones are changing, but that's not to say that it's contraception. So you could get pregnant. Yeah.
So it still needs contraception. Still could get pregnant. Okay, so we'll wrap up there, and I'm going to hand over to Tumi. Thank you, Dr. Muyeba, for an amazing, insightful talk. We've got loads of amazing comments in the chat, so you can take a look over there. I'll hand over to Tumi.
Yeah, I do apologize that you didn't see all the slides. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
I think we did see quite a lot of them, most of them.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Great hosting.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Catherine Muyeba, and also thank you, Sarah, as well. I'm sure that we've all learned a lot from there. I know that I've learned a lot as well. I like to think of myself as a young guy, but I'm learning some things, some keywords. I know my mom has been mentioning some of these things as well. So yeah, it's something that I can just understand as well, and hopefully everybody else has got what they needed as well. Okay, so let me share my screen.
Let me. Oh, did I stop sharing? Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Sorry. Can you see my screen? Please tell me if you can see it.
Yeah, we can.
All right. Yeah. So, so thank you for joining Health Hour. So these are some of the upcoming events that we have for Health Hour as well. So we have menstrual health. So understanding your cycle, owning your health. So that's going to be on Saturday, 18th of April, 2026, from 11 a.m. like it was today. So the guest speaker is going to be Dr. Karen Joash. And yeah, to register, email info@khan.org.uk. So I'm sure that will be really good as well. So they do what a healthy period looks like and what it doesn't, managing pain, heavy bleeding and hormonal changes, advocacy and support, and common menstrual disorders. Yeah. And then there is the Black Health Awards, which is on the 4th of July. So that day is the best day in the world because that's my birthday. So yeah, that's going to be fun. I believe if you've been to the previous ones, you know how elaborate and amazing it was as well. I also played saxophone in the last Health Hour as well. Not last Health Hour, in the last Black Health Care Awards as well. So it was really amazing to network with people and just celebrate people that like we all need to be celebrated. So just being there, support each other, and celebrate people. So yeah, so basically yeah, there's a 3-course dinner, live music and performances, premium networking opportunities, award ceremony, and also you can celebrate my birthday as well if you want to. Yeah, so you can scan the QR code to secure your tickets, and yeah, hopefully see you there. So that is going to be, it's a black tie event. So join us is in the evening, and we'll keep on promoting it as we're getting closer to the time. So we have Black-led counseling service. So this is culturally tailored counseling for Caribbean and African communities. So we offer counseling sessions designed specifically for Caribbean and African people. Our team of Black counselors bring diverse backgrounds and deep understanding of cultural nuances, ensuring every session resonates with authenticity and empathy. So to make a referral for yourself or someone, you could use our referral form. So if you have any questions, you can email at counseling@khan.org.uk, and you can also scan the QR code if you want as well. We have Green and Arts Wellbeing Service. So join us to connect, create and celebrate wellness with Caribbean and African inspired activities like painting, nature works, and more. So that is Bolton every Wednesdays, Stockport every Tuesdays, Gorton every Mondays. So come for fun, art, and new friendships. For questions, contact Lola at Green and Arts wellbeing@khan.org.uk or call 077 899 75205. And the times for that are, Wednesdays 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Stockport is at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Gorton is at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And lastly, we have our Black Red Ribbon Champions, free, confidential, and cultural aware. You don't have to face HIV alone. So carrying HIV on your own can feel very heavy. Fear, shame, and worrying about how others will react can make every day harder. You shouldn't have to manage this in silence. Our HIV rapid testing across our community makes it simple and private, giving you clarity and support. Our team are friendly, understanding, and happy to help. So contact BLK Red Ribbon at khan.org.uk or call 077 10 022 382 to get started. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you next week. So I'll stop sharing now, and I'll take it back to Sarah. Thank you.
today. Whether you joined us on Zoom, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, thank you for making the Health Hour part of your Saturday. We hope today's session gave you the right dose of health wisdom that you can share with your friends and family. When we share knowledge, we strengthen our entire community. Mark your calendar. Next Saturday, same time. Got a topic in mind? We want to hear from you. At health@can.org.uk. Health Hour, hosted by the Caribbean and African Health Network.